Hey, so this week we're going to talk a little bit about solid shapes. And you see, I wrote down 3D, right? Because last week I talked about 2D, so two-dimensional, and this is 3D, three-dimensional. And the other thing that you'll see these called is solid shapes. So last week we were all about things that were flat, and this week we're going to be talking about some shapes that are not flat. They're three-dimensional. Now, this is not something that we have to learn in kindergarten, but it's something that you guys can totally learn about, and it'll help you know more for your geometry in first, second, third, fourth grade. Okay? So just want to tell you a little bit about these shapes while you're practicing doing the little booklets about them this week, okay? So let's talk about the basic solid shapes. The first one, I'm going to slide these out of the way for a second so we can look at these one at a time. The first one you see has a face, the flat side, that looks like a what? A square, yeah. And so this one is called a cube. And you're familiar with a cube. It's the shape of our dice. And, well, it's the shape of lots of different things. But all of the faces on a cube, all of these flat faces, are squares. So it has 1 and then 2 on the bottom, then 3, 4, 5, 6 faces. And mathematicians usually use the word vertex for these solid shapes too. So we call these vertices. And for our purposes, I'm going to call these straight edges. And I'll tell you that this is something that there seems to be a lot of argument about. So a bunch of grown-ups who study shapes and study math argue about how to use these words when we teach students about solid shapes. So some people say that edges on a solid shape have to be straight. And other people say, no, there can be curved edges. So I'm just always going to call them a straight edge or a curved edge. And we'll look at a curved edge in just a second so we know what we're talking about. Okay, so I'm going to call these straight edges, and I'm going to call these vertices, which is where straight edges are coming together and where different faces of our solids are coming together. So what are we going to call this one again? It's a cube. Right. I'm going to write it right down here. Cube. Beautiful. Okay, that's our first one I want you to know. The second one is another one we've already talked about in school. It is round, and we don't use really the word circle, except we could say it sort of has a circular shape, but circle usually is always going to mean flat. And so we're going to call this round, and its special name is a sphere. Now I'm going to write this, and I'm going to tell you about how we say it. This SPH is like saying an S and an F together. So it's sphere, sphere. You can see the word here in the rest of this word, right? So it's sphere. So a round ball is called a sphere. So the name of this one is a sphere, and this one is called a cube, right? And the next one I'm going to show you is this little fella. I'll show you his side and his top and his bottom. And this one is called a cylinder, and it's with a soft C at the beginning. So it's cylinder. So cylinder. And the cylinder, you can see, has a circular face, 2 circular faces, and then it's curved all the way around. And this is an example of one that I would say had a curved edge, which is this place where this face is meeting this curved part. So this is a cylinder. So here we have a cube, a sphere, and a cylinder. And the next one I want to talk about is this little fella right here. And if you think about going to an ice cream store, this might remind you of the word that we call this one. We call it a cone. Yeah, we call it a cone. So I'm going to scooch this up a little bit so I have room down here. So this is a cone, C-O-N-E, good. And you see the cone has, whoa, oopsie daisy. The cone has a flat circular side, and then it comes up right to a point right here. A cone just exactly like an ice cream cone. So that's a cone. And then here's another one. Check this one out. So these faces are what? Rectangles, right? And the ends of this one happen to be a square, which of course we know are rectangles too. So this one is going to be named for that rectangular shape, and it's called a rectangular prism. How's that for a weird word? Prism. Don't usually ever see an S and an M together at the end of a word. Very rarely. Prism. So a rectangular prism. So let's go over these again. Cylinder, sphere, cube, cone, rectangular prism. Okay, now I'm going to point to them and you tell me what they're called. Ready? Yep. Good. And good. Now, one of the things in early grades that we want to do with these solid shapes is think about how we could move them, whether they would roll, whether we could slide them, how would they behave if we pushed them. So I'm going to show you some stuff. Look at this cube. If we push it, can it roll? No. How come? Right, because it's got all these clunk, clunk, clunk. It has all these flat faces. Good. Will the sphere roll? Oh yeah, you bet. It'll roll all over the place. What about a cylinder? Not like this, but what about... Whoa, whoa, gone, back. Good, yeah, the cylinder rolls. What about the cone? Not like this, but what if I put it on its side? Yeah, it rolls around. It doesn't roll straight. It would roll kind of in a circular pattern, but there you go. It rolls. Okay, and what about this rectangular prism? Well, Mrs. Bennett, of course not. It's like having a square wheel on your car. It is not going to roll. Right, so it's a good slider, but not a good roller. Okay, so those are our basic solid shapes. There are a couple of extras that we'll talk about called pyramids, and they would remind you of the pyramids from Egypt. So there's one here, this one that has a square bottom and triangle faces. That's a regular pyramid. And then we have one that has a triangle bottom. It's called a triangular pyramid. So you might see those on some of your worksheets, the pictures of solids. You might see some of those triangular or regular pyramids. And of course, are they going to roll around? No way, because they've got these flat faces. Right. Okay, so this is just the basics of the solid shapes. I just wanted you to know their names and know what they look like. And later this week, you're going to do a little hunt and see if you can find some solid shapes around your house. There are even a few tricky ones on there, like a hexagonal prism that you can look for, and a triangular prism maybe that you can look around and see if you see any objects in your house that have those shapes. So this is just fun exploration. Just want you to know these words and know that we're going to use those words, vertices, and we're going to use this word face for these flat sides for these shapes. And then you'll do some more work with these when you get into geometry a little bit later on in your school career. Okay, all right, well, go out there and do a little practice with some solids. Okay, see you later.